You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
Let's go!
All right, folks, welcome back to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host David Story. On the line, we've got Kenzo Shibata. He is the host of the excellent Class Time podcast.
Yeah.
He is the functional vice president of the Chicago Teachers Union. Kenzo, thanks for being with us. We've been talking about Karen Lewis and some of her legacy, and I think one more thing that I'd like to talk about, and then I think that'd be a good segue into what we've been dealing with today, is the strikes that y'all led earlier in this decade. Because one of the things that we hear today about, and we've always heard, but it's especially prominent today that we've heard about teachers, is that they're lazy. They want to do the most work for the least amount of money. They don't care about their communities. They don't care about their children. And the strikes and what y'all were demanding in your contracts that y'all went out on strike for, really, I mean, it flies in the face of that kind of logic. So can you talk about those strikes earlier in the or last decade? Now it's 2021. Can you talk about those strikes and why y'all were striking and the community support that you had?
So, yeah, thank you for that question. That, really sums up, I think, the core of what our project has been, which is creating a seamlessness between the teachers union and the community we serve. That, we hold meetings that include people who are not members, who are parents and students and, community organizers. We do a lot of work with the Black Youth Project and, Asada's Daughters, all these, youth and Black-led organizations. And that's why, it's courted a little controversy in recent years with our steadfast support of Black Lives Matter in the Chicago Teachers Union. But, the question you have to ask is so who are we serving? We're serving mainly working in class and poor students, Black and brown. We need to stand up for them. And if we don't stand up for them, they won't be able to thrive, and and ultimately they will bust the union. So there's both the right thing to do, and there is some self-interest in creating these deep ties. And we started doing that in core before we even took union leadership, starting in 2008 when we first formed. We had close ties to groups like Blocks Together, the Kenwood Oakland Community Organization. These are groups that will do direct action and aren't really well liked within the nonprofit industrial complex kind of community, the nonprofit world where people rub elbows and have galas instead of do organizing work. These are groups that we work. The groups that we worked with did organizing, got arrested. And then, we learned these tactics and strategies from them, got arrested alongside them a few times, and put our skin in the game and showed that, we truly do care about this, even when there wasn't, any money to be made. If we weren't in union office, this was stuff that we were doing on our free time. And that built a lot of trust with the community. And by the time we were ready to negotiate our first contract in 2012, that was a wild time. Rahm Emanuel was in office for only 1 year. He hated us. He was constantly attacking us. The first thing he did in office was take away.
Wait, hold on. Just real quick, Kenzo. Wait. Yeah. Rahm's a Democrat.
Absolutely.
Aren't Democrats in the pockets of teachers unions?
That's the funny thing. That's the huge contradiction there. Is that, of course, with Rahm Emanuel he's a national Democrat, even though he's from Illinois. He was in the White House. He was a congressman. And, the bottom line on his demise, I think, was he tried bringing that Washington, D.C. energy to Chicago. You can't really do that because when you're doing your politics from DC, you're not really connected to your own community, and your bad decisions aren't always reflected upon you. he could go on news and like say positive progressive things and Chicagoans liked him while voting for Forever Wars, for example. You can't do that in your own backyard. And what happened was when he started doing his stuff in his own backyard as mayor, we would protest, not at his house because that's illegal, but there would be marches in his neighborhood that, you know, coincidentally would be around his house. His life became pretty unbearable. And, you know, I think that us as the teachers union, having those strong ties to these community orgs, and bringing critical masses to these kind of demonstrations, we also brought along a few other people who I think were not as militant as us. So we exposed a lot of contradictions in that Democratic Party, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's important to point out because, you know, teachers, not just in Chicago, not that, you know, that's operates in a vacuum. Teachers across the United States constantly get the blame for the failures of the administration, the legislators, and administrators in the school districts, especially in, you know, metro areas and areas like that, where they may perform a little bit more poorly. But but the problem is, and it's the same, we have the exact same problem here in Alabama. The problem is the teachers' hands are tied, completely tied by the legislature, completely tied by the administration. And I think it's important for the general listeners out there to understand that the teachers, bringing it back to what Jacob said, are fighting for the community. They're not concerned about what the legislators think. They're not concerned about what the administrators think. They're trying to do what's in the best interest of their students and their students' families. And, you know, that y'all have done a good job of making that well known. And some of the others, you know, with West Virginia, one of our good friends was a teacher there, and, you know, they've done a wonderful job. But I think that's important to point out that typically the issue in schools is not with the teachers. The issue at school is with the legislators and the administration that's never taught in their life. Never sit down and try to teach a class of 30, 35 students.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. The catalyst for a lot of the problems we have here is these 1995 laws that were passed in our state legislature. And, you know, to give a little political context to that, remember in 94 when Newt Gingrich did this Republican revolution and took over Congress, that had a down ballot effect as well. So for the first time in a long time, Illinois had a Republican state house, and that Republican state house really liked Democrat Richard Daley when he was trying to rebuild the machine that, you know, Harold Washington's coalition destroyed, our one progressive, awesome mayor a couple decades ago. But yeah, when Daley had made this pact with the Republicans downstate to take over the schools, because there's a lot of coded language about Chicago when you go into the suburbs or downstate. They don't want to take, you know, they don't want to quote unquote, you know, take care of our problems. So that is how the mayor got total control of the schools.
Yep. Yeah, we're going to pick that up on the other side of the break. Stay tuned. This is the Valley Labor Report.
Charge upon the land, a population burnt up, bled dry. The marginalized multiply and unite to fight.
All right, folks, welcome back to Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison with my co-host David Story. On the line, we've got Kenzo Shibata, host of Class Time Podcast. You can find that on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. He is also the functional vice president of the Chicago Teachers Union. He just wrapped up, finishing telling us how, like, you know, corporate kind of Democrats and in conjunction with Republicans in the Illinois state legislature got control of the Chicago public school system. And so what was it specifically that they were trying to push in those early when y'all went out on strike, that the teachers in the community, which, you know, folks talk about, oh, the teachers unions, but when they talk about their teachers, you know, their kids' teachers, they're like fine with them. But the teachers unions are the teachers, and especially the Chicago Teachers Union. I mean, I think it'd be good, Kenzo, if you could talk about the democratic process by which those strikes took place, because people don't really realize that. They really buy into the whole third party kind of thing. The union is separate from the workers, but really the union is what the workers make of it. And so, what was it that these corporate Democrats and the Republicans were trying to push down the Chicago teachers' throats that last decade they were just like, hell no, we refuse, and went out on strike?
Basically, it started with Rahm Emanuel was the mayor of Chicago, like I was saying, because the state legislature gave all the control to the mayor of Chicago. He or she has a huge amount of authority over the schools. And with Rahm Emanuel in charge, he also had a ton of money. So he has both authority and power. And so the first thing he did was he took away a 4% raise that was guaranteed to us because of a clause in our contract that allows him to rescind that raise if they could prove a financial emergency for the district. And, we did a whole campaign because we saw that they were hiding money to basically prove this. So he took away that 4% raise. That agitated our members quite a bit. And then he extended the school day based upon a lie. There was this statistic he kept moving around, which was later admitted the person who wrote the talking point was a lie, that kids in Houston, because their school day is longer, have an average of 4 more years of school by the time they graduate. This was predicated on a lie because in Chicago, we negotiated a contract sometime, I want to say in the 80s or 90s, where teachers in the elementary schools, because the district couldn't afford lunch monitors, decided that they would take their contractual lunch break at the very end of the day and then basically monitor students as part of their duties during the student lunch. Rahm Emanuel used this in very bad faith and extended our school day. So now our school day is longer than almost every one of them. And there's been a lot of negative impacts on that. It's not just that we don't want to work as much, but like it cuts into our ability to coach. It cuts into our ability to facilitate things like debate club. So Rahm didn't actually bring any extra education to students. In some ways, students, I believe, are in the schools less because of that. So when it came to like fighting for our contract, we knew what we wanted, and we were, a pretty, fired up membership at that point. So, we asked them, what do we want? And members said, we want smaller class sizes. We want air conditioning in buildings that don't have it, because at the beginning and the end of the school year, it gets unbearably hot. We want to have a nurse in every school, which is still a fight. We finally won it, but it still hasn't been implemented, 10 years later. Wow. We wanted things that were mainly for the students and that would make our jobs not just easier, but make us more impactful in their lives. Like if a student is fed, has access to nurse, has access to a counselor, they're going to be more prepared to learn in our classrooms. And so we were really able to rally around that because that's what teachers wanted. And it took a lot of surveying our membership. It took a lot of surveying our community as well, parents, talking to students, doing everything we could to get it out there. And that became our list of demands. The problem being, when that 1995 package of laws were passed, one of them made it, it made it a non-negotiable, we couldn't actually bring to bargaining anything that wasn't pay or benefits. Yeah. And what that did was it allowed for 15 years of the Board of Education saying to the media, all the teachers want are raises. That's all they care about, because that's all we could strike over. What we had to thread the needle very carefully with in 2012 was when we would go out on strike, we were striking for wages and benefits and for unfair labor practices. We were not actually striking for class sizes or any of these other things that we were fighting for, but those were, we kept those on the table. And that was something that was very different about the way we negotiated. Was we kept a lot of things, or we wouldn't sign off on agreements on some things to keep other things on the table, and all those other things being class sizes, things that directly impacted our students. So we didn't settle on pay right away. And that's a risk because the mainstream media then says, oh, well, they're holding out for more money. This class size stuff is a stunt. And then we have to and this is the really hard thing to get across to members, is kind of ignore the mainstream media and just keep on keeping on, because we're just not going to get good press from them. So we just need to, be our own advocates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that just such slimy? These politicians are telling you the only things you can strike over are pay and benefits, and then and you can't strike over classroom sizes, you can't strike over working conditions, anything like that. And so then when you strike over ostensibly pay and benefits, but obviously this other stuff is on the table, everyone knows what you want, and they have the audacity to go out in the media. Oh, these greedy teachers are only striking over pay and benefits, and you're the ones that made it so that we can only strike over pay and benefits. I mean, that's just the most slimy, disgusting, revolting. I can't come up with words to describe how gross that is.
Part of it too is backing us into that corner.
Yeah.
Because if we were to say, no, we're actually striking over X, Y, and Z, things that are non-negotiables, they could declare it an illegal strike and, have an actual basis for filing an injunction. But one thing I do want to mention real quick is that when folks are worried about illegal strikes, which is a very valid concern, every strike that we've had in Chicago since we revamped the union in 2010, the mayor has tried to declare illegal and has, filed for injunctions. So every strike we've had, technically, in some ways, we are functioning as it being an illegal strike. But then afterwards, everything with the lawyers gets resolved. It's a pain in the butt, but it's just how we have to do it.
It's a pain in the butt, and it's demoralizing to your rank and file, because if anybody that's ever been in negotiations knows, just like your example is perfect, threading the needle. You really have to be careful of what you say during negotiations and even post negotiations with the media. Otherwise, you wind up in a lot worse condition than you are. But it's devastating, and they know the corporate lawyers that are on the administration side on your part, but on corporations on our part, they know exactly what they're doing. They're pushing our backs against the wall. So I mean, but y'all have done a great job with communication, and you being one of the communicating director previously kind of speaks to the ability to communicate to the rank and file teachers and members out there.
Thanks for tuning in, folks. Here's an announcement right at the top. The North Alabama DSA is holding a necessities drive every Saturday. That means this Saturday from 3 to 5 p.m. at the IBEW local Union Hall, local 558 Union Hall, on Clinton Avenue, right across from Yellowhammer and Campus 805 in Huntsville. So if you're in the area, you want to drop off some clothes, some non-perishable food items, blankets, then swing by the IBEW Union Hall right across from Yellowhammer and Campus 805 from 3 to 5 p.m. this Saturday and every Saturday. Follow at DSA North Alabama on Twitter for more information.
And all of that merchandise is going to the Manor House, so it's being distributed very well, and they really need PPE as well. So if you've got hand sanitizer, go by Costco and support the Teamsters out there and pick up some hand sanitizer and take it over to them, or some masks.
Yep. So if you want to see what we're up to throughout the week, get our snide quips about the news of the day, then you should follow us on social media. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/The Valley Labor Report. We're on Twitter at Labor Reporters. I'm on Twitter at JacobM_AL. David is on Twitter at Radical Unionist. That's spelled RADICL Unionist. If you missed part of the show and want to go back and watch it later, you can search YouTube for The Valley Labor Report and subscribe to our channel. You can go back and watch the full show there, and we clip segments and release them throughout the week. We also upload the program on more than 11 different podcasting apps. So to see if we are on your listening platform of choice, go to thevalleylaborreport.transistor.fm/subscribe. We've got a website, thevalleylaborreport.org. And finally, if you appreciate our work and want to help us stay on the air, then consider throwing us a couple dollars a month on patreon.com/thevalleylaborreport.